Welcome to this week's meeting of the Rockland Board of Selectmen, coming to you live on WRPS from the H. Bernard Monahan Memorial Room at Rockland Town Hall. On the agenda this week, we've got the schedule for road work, report of the Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee, and establishment of a Stormwater Committee. Now here's the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Ed Kimball.
Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting. Would you all please rise and join us for Pledge of Allegiance by our Veterans Agent and future Eagle Scout. Flag, United States of America, to the Republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening and welcome. Please be advised this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by WRPS for the playback on Comcast Channel 14 and Verizon Channel 31. It will also be available for online video on demand viewing at WRPSRockland.com within 24 hours of its conclusion. As our other recently recorded meeting and community events, please go to WRPSRockland.com for further information. Tonight, under community announcements, we have an Eagle Scout Award. Is Stephen Ryan Sharuk here tonight.
So Stephen, in honor of achieving your Eagle Scout, the town of Rockland presents you a certificate of recognition in recognition of your commitment and dedication as a Troop 113 Eagle Scout in the town of Rockland, Massachusetts on May 6, 2018.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about your project and why you chose it?
Sure.
Go ahead.
My Eagle project was building, My Eagle project was building 4 benches down at Hearts of Park. There are 6-foot benches made of pressurized wood to withstand the weather of New England, because I know how crazy that gets. Demonstrations time. I have 2 at the entrance, 1 at the playground there, and also 1 at the top of the hill overlooking the lake. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Nice job.
It took about, I would say, a couple weeks of planning if you don't include paperwork, but it definitely took months with everything all together, and I couldn't have done it by myself.
Why'd you choose that?
I chose that because I wanted to do a project that could be used every day and also something that would help the town.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
very
a lot.
much. Congratulations. Nice job, Steve. Nice job, Chris.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have our veteran street corner designation on Cliff and Glen Streets. Sean O'Connell, Mr. Laughlin.
Thank you. Tonight we're here to honor a fallen hero, Staff Sergeant Sean O'Connell. I grew up with Sean. I first became aware of Sean growing up on Hartford Street when I was 11 years old. Sean and his little brother Mike used to ride by my house and tell me if I came off my front lawn, they'd beat the crap out of me. So I, needless to say, I never left my front lawn. When I met Sean again in high school, I had my reservations based on prior experience. But the person I met in high school couldn't have been any different. Sean was, he was the complete opposite of what I thought. This was a guy that had the power to bring groups together. He found common ground and made sure everyone was included. Sean was just really, a hero to so many. He used to tell me all the time that I got him through a lot of classes in high school. The truth is, he got so many people through high school, just with his friendship When I told him I was going to run for selectman, it was actually the last time I saw him, he told me no. He said that I wasn't allowed to do it unless I had him and his brothers as my security detail. When I told him that I was just, town selectman and I didn't think I'd need security, he agreed. He said okay and let me do it. He passed a week later. Sean was, a hero to many, and this Saturday it'll be an honor, for the town that he loved to dedicate the corner of Cliff and Glen to Sean's legacy, his memory, because to that point he's a hero to us and he's a fallen hero to this town. So, with that being said, the town of Rockland presents a certificate of recognition to the family of Sean O'Connell. For your son's selfless service to this great nation, we honor him by dedicating his name on the corner of Cliff Street and Glen Street in the town of Rockland, Massachusetts, this May 19, 2018. And Veterans Agent Vinnie Fontaine with the plaque. They'll hang across the street from your house. Come on up.
We had to call Town Hall official photographer Tony Materna out of retirement.
Always there. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Vinnie Fontaine for the Memorial Day Parade update.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. We're getting ready for Memorial Day. It's a very busy weekend. On the Saturday the 26th, we're starting the flagging of all the veterans' graves. We're asking the public to come help. We're meeting at the VFW at noontime on Saturday, and we'll be going to different cemeteries throughout the town to make sure every veteran's grave has this flag. Also on Sunday at 11 o'clock at Union Square, we're having a short ceremony. And then on Memorial Day, we have two ceremonies. One is at 8 o'clock at St. Patrick's Cemetery. It's a short ceremony. And then Memorial Day Parade is on Monday also. And we start at 10 o'clock. We have 3 different locations. So it's going to be a long parade. But if you're going to be at a certain area, we'll be there. Probably 11 o'clock at the library, and then towards 12 at the memorial at the high school. So be patient if you're waiting for us, but we will make the rounds. So thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vinnie.
I just wanted to, this is the first meeting we've had since our town meeting, and I just wanted to thank the community for actually coming out and supporting us at town meeting. Although it's only one day a year typically, you get to see all the hard work that all the townspeople, employees, the town department heads, all the boards put in yearly to get us to that point, which is our town meeting. So I want to thank everybody for doing that. As well, I'd like to also, mention again that we need volunteers to come out for our committees and whatnot. So now's a good time to join because we still have a new year's worth of work ahead of us. So if anyone's willing, we have plenty of open positions. Next up, we have minutes. Item number 2, we have open session minutes of April 17, 2018.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor? So unanimous vote, thank you. Open session minutes of May 1st, 2018.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor? Again, another unanimous vote, thank you. Open session minutes of May 7th, 2018.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor? Again, a unanimous vote, thank you. And then we have an exec.
You're an abstention.
What's that? Yeah, I wasn't here, sorry. For May 1st. May 7th I was here.
May 1st.
May 1st.
Right. Thank you. I knew there was one.
Yep, executive session minutes of April 17th,
Motion to approve,
2018.
with matters not to be released to all, to minutes not to be released to all matters are settled.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. That's unanimous again. And then we have executive session minutes of April 30th, 2018.
Motion to approve, not to be released, minutes not to be released till all matters are settled.
Second.
All those in favor? That's a unanimous vote. Thank you again. Okay, next up on the agenda, we have liaison appointments. So we do this annually after we have our town election. I get the pleasure of, I guess, redistributing some of the boards that we have so that we can realign our selectmen positions with other volunteer boards and committees and commissions throughout town. And the idea behind it is so that we can go through and everyone gets a better understanding of what the other boards and committees do, and also at the same time, hopefully build collaborative working relationships with those committees in the future. So, first up, we have Michael Laughlin. Michael Laughlin's going to do capital planning, community center, finance committee, historical committee, park commission, permit building committee, and rent control. Mr. Mullen will do assessors, board of health, cultural council, housing authority, library trustee, planning board, youth commission, and I also may add that Mr. Mullen also currently serves on the fire station building committee. Mr. Ryan, charter maintenance, seeing as you've been here the longest, maybe you can take a look at it again. Council of Aging, forest committee, memorial committee, and open space committee. Deidre Hall, community preservation committee, which is a newly formed committee because we enacted the CPA recently. And Deidre has, a lot of experience with that. Internet committee, school committee, sewer commission, stormwater committee, which again is another one that just come out about because of our town meeting, which Deidre is very versed in. Water commission and zoning appeals board. Myself, I'll continue with cable advisory. I'll go back and help out conservation commission, the energy committee, the school building committee, and the SRA, which is South Field Redevelopment Authority for Union Point. And I just want to thank all the selectmen for the time that they actually put in as liaisons, because we're all volunteers and it takes a lot of time sometimes to attend these meetings and go to things, and you'll see that more as we get into some of our next agenda items. So next up, we have on the agenda is Reimagine Rockland, the MDI grant discussion, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, for folks who have seen the teaser online about the news and the updates that will be shared tonight, we do have a few. Before I introduce Ann Burke, who the state has graciously hired her to continue her work with us. But first things first, we may mention the beginning of it, I think in February, but now things are rocking and rolling and we're ready to launch. But later this month, we'll be launching what we're calling the Soul of Rockland, our placemaking initiative. And really what it will be is it'll be a cultural placemaking initiative that we're working with MAPC on, and also through a grant from MAPC, like in Mass Development, to do cultural placemaking right here, in downtown. And for folks who really don't have any idea what cultural placemaking is, it's really easy. Beginning actually at Rockland Day on June 16th, and then continuing like through the farmers markets that are being held each Friday over the summer, folks will have the opportunity to come to Rockland Day in the farmers market, and share with us really their footprint that will be used, and they can help us identify which places, which landmarks in downtown are special to them, are meaningful to them, or are there our favorite spots, whether because they're historic or that's just where they have breakfast every day, where they'll be able to help us identify those spots. And then in the fall, as a result of all that, efforts at the, and we're going to have an art shoe cart at the Rockland Day in the farmers market to help us really color in the shoe prints as well. Then in the fall, we're going to be working to actually paint the shoe prints on, at the locations that have been identified by town residents, by visitors, as those really special spots in Rockland Center. So there are really two components to this whole initiative. Number one, if we do this right and have a whole lot of engagement, we have the possibility to continue this program and to actually obtain additional grant funding next year, which is exciting. Number two, it only works if we have you join us. So when you come out to Rockland Day, or when you come to the farmers markets this year, if you can take a few minutes, give us your footprint and help us identify really what those spots are in downtown Rockland that you feel really just contribute to the fabric and history here, that will be huge. So that's number two. Number three, we will be asking for our community donations to make this whole initiative work, because it is it will be really our grassroots, really our community-led initiative. So beginning, I believe, on the 21st of this month, we'll be launching through the Reimagine Rockland Facebook site more information on how to donate, more information on what the project is all about. And it is very exciting, and to continue to really embrace the arts and the culture component and the history that we have in Rockland Center is really exciting. So that's the first thing. If folks could stay interested, and I'll be ready for some more information on that. That's number one. Number two, as I mentioned, Rockland Day is a proud host and our partner of hosting Rockland Day this year, which this year will be held on Saturday, June 16th from 1 to 4 p.m. Down in the Bicentennial Track area on Lower Reed Street. So I knew I was going to get that wrong. Lower Memorial Park. There was a location change this year. That's why I kind of twisted my words. But more information will be out online on the town website, on Facebook and everything else on that as well. Now, without further ado, if I could introduce Ian Burke. As we announced a few weeks ago, Rockland did receive another $15,000 Mass Downtown Initiative grant, and thankfully, we have Ian back to work with us to help us lead us forward. So, Ian.
Well, thank you very much. I am delighted to be back in Rockland to join this great steering committee and working group of volunteers from the community who have been really working hard over the winter on 4 or 5 different committees, one on business development, one on infrastructure, one on arts and culture, one on streetscapes, and marketing and social media. And these committees, I was just so impressed. We had an opportunity to meet an hour before this meeting to learn what they have been working on since I left in the fall. And I was excited to hear some of the great accomplishments that they've had in a very short period of time, but also the level of involvement by a broad cross-section of artists and people here from the community and city departments and others who are just interested in advancing the work of this group. Some of these projects are projects that take a long time, and there's been progress in some infrastructure grant applications and awards and some early successes along those lines, as well as some really nice the stroll at Christmas time and some of the tying into the artist community. And I was really excited to hear from some of the artists that there are 150 or so working artists who are right here in downtown Rockland, which is a huge thing, and communities would be delighted to have that core of activity and thinking about how do you build on those opportunities with arts and culture. So the work in this round, which we will undertake between May and October, hopefully, we'll have it completed by then, is to really look at Reimagine Rockland. It's been a working group right now, all volunteers working very hard and trying to figure out how to be sustainable over time. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at is to look at different kinds of organizational structures, you know, some of the other places and how they organize themselves to have a sustainable sort of downtown community-based, community-driven project or program that lives beyond somebody just being burnt out and not wanting to be a volunteer anymore. So these are efforts that are not something that happens overnight. And some of you may have heard they had a guest speaker, I hear, from the town of Beverly, who has a very well-established 20-year-old Main Street program. And I think she said, and I heard her speak before, Jen Wallace said, it's a million little things. It's lots and lots of little things. And after a while, you look back on all the little things that you've been able to accomplish, and you've really been transformative, and you really had the opportunity to make a big difference in your downtown and how it's perceived and the activity that you are able to generate. So one of the things that we'll be doing as a big body of this work is to look at what does this organization look like. So we'll look at different models, Main Street programs, business improvement districts, hybrids of those, community development corporations / business improvement districts, maybe a new model that might be coming out. It hasn't come out yet, but their state's been talking about community benefit districts. All of them are around the same thing. How do you organize yourself to be sustainable, to help your volunteers be supported, and to help provide the resources that helps you accomplish what you need to accomplish over both in the short term and in the long term. And I said to the group earlier today that this is an effort that from the very beginning has been, if you looked at their mission statement, it's a community-based effort to try to make a healthy and vibrant downtown for everyone to enjoy. So in order to do that, it engages everyone. And we've also talked about the importance of and how fortunate you are to have a supportive town administration and select board who are here and has been supportive, and Marcy from the staff has been great. In addition to that, all the dozens of volunteers that I know who have been working on a lot of these projects over the last year. So the work in this grant, we will look at these different organizational structures, suggest a way for that to move forward, look at the work of the committees to identify what your priorities are and challenges and opportunities for this upcoming year, and then also to try to identify a strategy around finding some resources and actually be able to implement those things. Some of those are going to be, you know, looking at community or private support. Some of them might be looking at other kinds of partnerships, strategic partnerships, or other kinds of resources that are brought to the table to cobble together the resources you need to actually do what you want to do. So that's the work we're going to do, and I know on behalf of Reimagine Rockland, everybody's looking for other people to be involved in the committees. I thank all of you folks in the audience and on the board who have been involved in this process to date, and look forward to working with you over the next several months. So thanks you, and I'm happy to be back. Thanks. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Do you have a donation line set up yet?
No, not yet. That's all part of the process.
Okay, just curious. Okay, no, it's good.
Okay, next up on the agenda, we have road work schedule. Dave Taylor, Highway Super. Well, it looks like he has a guest with him as well, huh?
Yeah, I do, yeah, I'm sorry. Just wanted to give a road update for the 2018. We started doing this last year, and we usually do a wrap-up one at the end of the year. This is Dennis McCaffrey. He's with National Grid. He's our liaison over there. So before I get into everything that we've got scheduled, we also have some road work with National Grid, and I'm going to have Dennis go over those areas. Those areas are, just to touch base on it, it's Spring Street, Beach Street, which those streets are just out of moratorium. And to give you a wrap-up on it, what we're planning on doing, and those streets are in our 5-year plan on new curbing, new sidewalks, new ADA ramps to bring us up to compliancy. If anybody's seen the sidewalks over there or on Spring and Beach, obviously they're about 3 feet wide. There's trees growing out of them. So what's going to happen is they've reached out to us. We work with them diligently on trying to coordinate an effort so we don't have any issues down the road. But they know we were doing the curbing. It was in our 5-year plan. They have some substantial work to update some of the lines on there. I'm not a huge gas person. I'll let Dennis go over that. I know the lines are small right now, and they're not meeting what they should, and they want to update though. So I'll introduce Dennis McCaffrey from National Grid. He'll go over what the updates on it. Dennis, come on up.
Are you coming back?
I am, yeah. Dennis is just going to give his update.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Good evening. My name's Dennis McCaffrey. I'm the Customer and Community Manager for the South Shore, including Rockland. I know Alan. We've worked over the years on a variety of projects, solar, electrical reliability, things like that. By the way, I'm happy the power stayed on tonight since we also provide the electricity. So Dave's correct on Beach Street and Spring Street. We have to upgrade our infrastructure. So on an annual basis, our engineers will look at a system study. There's been a tremendous amount of growth over the years in Rockland, Abington, and the South Shore with conversions and new construction. But this used to be Boston Gas, a very old gas company. The piping's old, and in some cases it has to be upgraded, and that's the case in these two particular streets. So it's approximately 2,625 feet of upgrade to 8-inch plastic pipe in Beach, and about 1,475 in Spring Street. It's about 10 weeks worth of work. We recognize the streets are in good shape. We are going to provide funding to, and Dave, you might want to talk about that a little bit further, but we're going to provide the funding for a complete mill and overlay of the streets when we're done. So we're going to patch it, we're going to let it settle. Dave's going to make sure the compaction techniques are correct, and then we're going to provide the funding to the town. So a little bit of the background. I've worked with Alan. He challenged me to work closely with the DPW over the years. So we meet with Dave at the start of the construction season. We compare his public works projects, paving, water, with our work that we need to do. Again, we're an old company. We have at-risk pipe that we have to replace over the next 20 years. So I think we've done some great work. We're a couple years ahead of your paving schedule. So in other words, anything that we needed to get out of the ground prior to paving is out. This is a reliability project, and that's something we look at. We're challenged to provide safe and reliable natural gas. To do that, sometimes projects like this come up and we have to upgrade our infrastructure. And that's the point of these two projects. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions from the board?
What's the limit of the work? How far are you going up Beach? How far are you going up Spring?
So we're going 2,625 feet up Beach, approximately 1 to 265, and about 1,475 feet in Spring Street.
And I can give you the location, so
Yeah.
I'm more aware of where the start and the stop is. So if you're looking at it's from Domigan Drive on the Spring Street project and up that way, so on that, and then also from Summer, where Summer is, up to Beach, up to, you know, the industrial park. So that seems to be
Yep.
where the issue is, so it'll go all the way up to the industrial park.
Yep.
Keep in mind, you know, we did touch base on the rest of Beach Street going up that, and their engineers are, you know, are confident that we're not gonna have any issues
Right.
up on that length. So they wanted to update the pipe up until the industrial park. So, and then also keep in mind that once that's done, like I said, within our 5-year plan, Spring Street, the curbing and sidewalks, it wasn't until next year. We're gonna push it up to this year. So we're coordinating when National Grid is done, then we'll get the curbing, the sidewalks, the ADA ramps, all done, and then we'll be in compliancy. And National Grid has been honestly more than fair and generous on what we're getting for a check from them, as far as getting the road remilled and repaved. We've got brand new sidewalks, brand new curbing. Everybody's got the sign-offs on it. You know, we'll be good with National Grid, we're good with water, we're good with sewer, you know, and we're starting brand new, which is, you know, a great place to be, considering if we were gonna do the curbing and the sidewalks anyways, we would've had to cut in at that point. We would've had to patch that area, so I think it's an overall win-win for Rockland. It's a good coordination effort to get those areas done. So, and the same thing on Beach Street. We'll be going up to Beach Street. Funding is gonna be an issue as far as curbing and sidewalks on Beach, so what's gonna happen is we're gonna get spring all done this year, and then next year we're gonna hop up onto Beach. We'll do the curbing, sidewalks, all the way up into that area.
Are you gonna put back the same type of sidewalks, or are you gonna, like, I know that there's a section of beach that's basically just like an asphalt path
Yeah, it's
for
not,
people's front yard?
well, to make it ADA compliant, we have to get over to a 5-foot, so that's on the backside of the curb, 5 feet over. And then also where any of the crossings are to the streets, we have to get ADA compliancy, and if anybody knows the ball field over on Spring Street, that's obviously, you know, a crossing nightmare with the parking there. So that's gonna be ADA on the other side of the street over where the Azalea Magnolia is, and then a crossing over. So, you know, coming out of it at the end of the year, we're gonna be a lot safer. If you've seen what we did down in the school area and also on Lower Union, that's what we're looking to do. So we'll get everything over to compliancy. Once we start doing that a little bit more each year, we're receiving a little bit more in Chapter 90 funds as well. So, you know, and then we're actually, you know, working with Marcy too. We've been able to get, you know, a few more ADA grants through town. So, and, you know, again, you know, if we're all coordinating, you know, we'll work out, so.
I look forward to walking the new sidewalks.
Yes, me as well. I actually broke,
Yeah, I walk it
I
all
broke
the
2
time,
strollers
all the
walking,
time.
pushing
Yeah, me too.
3 children
Me
up
too.
those sidewalks with a triple stroller in one day. So, you got any questions for Dennis on this? So I thought I'd bring Dennis up first on that.
Just those 2 streets, or any of the subdivisions are off of it?
No, it's just those streets.
Yeah, there's
Yep.
no cut-in on it, Azalea or Magnolia, and no cut-ins on Bay Path, which we just did. So there's no issues there. We will have to chase in onto Azalea or Magnolia about 10 feet, and also on Bay Path, just so we can do the ADA ramps, you know, make that accessible, so. But again, I think it's a great project for us, and, you know, it just pushes us a little bit ahead of schedule, but I think, you know, with everything getting done, it's gonna be, you know, the roads are gonna be in great shape, you know, so.
Yeah, we've also, again, part of our meetings, I say annual meeting, but it seems like we talk like every week or 2 on the phone.
Yeah, we do a lot of fun.
But we've also provided a map of all our infrastructure underground to Dave, and so he can, if he gets extra Chapter 90 money, or if there's a change in the paving, he can pick a location where the gas has been upgraded, or there's no gas at all. There's not gas in every street in Rockland. So we really, it's been an effort. We try to do it with all the towns. We've had some pretty good success in Rockland. I know Alan challenged me a few years ago. I've been dealing with Alan for 5 or 6 years now, and seems to really, we've made them. We're not perfect, right? Everyone knows. We don't know where the new service requests are gonna come in. That's resident driven. But in terms of planned work and mandated work, I think we've been very successful staying ahead of Rockland's public works project.
Yeah.
It becomes very difficult when we pave a road and then we go back and do work on that road, and everyone says, what are you doing? So Dennis has been outstanding about coordinating with us, and I want to thank him for that. You hate to pave a road and then dig it up. However, some people don't realize sometimes, as a result of the road work, something springs a leak, whether it's gas or water. So here and there, unfortunately, we do have to go back and do a patch.
Pulsing.
But that's why we often wait. Dave, what do you wait, 6, 8 weeks or more sometimes?
Yeah, well, we've got a different process now. I mean,
But
we've seen.
we
what
used to
did
bang
last
up
year.
some of the roads, and it caused leaks. So we're trying to prevent that.
Yeah, and in that same regards, the National Grid's been great. I know we had a few surprises where he had some extra money, and we looked at doing some streets on our second round. We have a first round and a second round towards the end of the year, and then we would notice, well, I got this street, I got just enough money to do this dead end street. How are we on this? And we reach out to them, and they actually fit it in, small street, and we start off with gas is good. They're brand new gas, water's good, sewer's good, and we were able to get that done. And I know that's a great thing when you can reach out and just say, look, I'm thinking about doing this road in like 3 months, and all of a sudden, gas company's out there within a month, and they're doing the gas for us, on a full wreck. So, we're trying to get away from any, issues down the road, and, like I said, we've got a great 5-year plan, and National Grid's 2 years in front of us right now, which is what we want to do, obviously. So, and we're compared to most cities and towns, we're in great shape as far as the amount of plastic that's in the ground compared to steel lines or coated. So,
Yep.
we're in pretty good shape. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Great, thank you, Dennis.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah.
Dave,
All right.
Dennis, excuse me, thank you.
All right, so I'm just going to give a quick update. So we've got actually 2 rounds of road work this year, which we've just started. So we've just started pulling curbing and the old sidewalks on Condon Circle. We're over on the Central Street Thayer Terrace area right now, and then we'll be moving over to the Loretta Ave, Lavina, Ward, that area off of Forest Street. So that's our first round. We have 11 roads in that. So most of those are all full wrecks besides Linwood Terrace and Shaw Ave, which is actually going to be a small overlay, and then we're going to be doing a micro. So on that too, like Alan brought up the area, when we go over a full wrecks, a lot of times in the past, and this is in every town, once you get over to a full wreck, you can loosen something up. You might get a water leak, a gas leak, a sewer pipe could break, a drainage pipe can break. So what we've done is last year, we just started doing it, and a lot of towns and cities have got over it, and we've got over to the microsurfacing. So what we do is we do a full wreck, we get over to a binder, we let it sit for a while. You typically, if we're going to have an issue, we're going to have an issue within a couple months. We come back towards the end of that, near the end of the summer, and then we microsurface those roads. So we can cut into that, do any emergency repairs, and then we end up doing two rounds of microsurfacing. We did it last year on some of our roads, and we were really happy on how they held up through the winter. It's a different process, but it actually saves us about 15 to 20% per road, and then it seals that road, and you're going to get longevity. And again, we followed that because Hingham does that. When I first got the job, I reached out to area DPW directors. I'm like, who has the best roads? They said Hingham. I met with the DPW director over there. He gave us some insight. Great guy, and that's what they do over there. They started this process in 1999, and they've completely come back around and then doing those roads from 1999. So they've done all the roads and they've looped. So after this first round, we also have some curbing and some sidewalks. We're going to start off with Old Market Street, which seems to be an issue coming out of Wyman's Fields. It always has. If anybody's familiar with that area, those sidewalks up are about a foot high. They're asphalt. They slope down. They're dangerous in the winters. So we've had a lot of people and the residents reaching out from us from the Wyman's Field area. So we did that over the Chapter 90. Last year, we were going to try to fit it in the end of last year. And we held off to the spring of this year because we had to get some telephone poles moved over the winter. So we're good on that. So that'll be our first curbing, sidewalks, ADA ramp coming across the street over to that island that we did last year. And then we'll be compliancy coming out of Wyman's Field, which is a tough area. Once we get done with that, we're going to be going over to Lower Union Street, which is the left side. So if you're going inbound, it's on the left side. So that needed a little bit more, we needed a little bit more surveying, a little bit more engineering. The topography there drops down quite a bit, about 12 inches to 16 inches in some areas. So we needed to get the elevations all there. So we'll be starting that, and then so if you're going down the street on the left-hand side, the curbing and the sidewalks will bump out, and what we're gonna have to do with the topography changes is we'll be doing some stone walls, some raised granite walls. We're gonna try to stagger so it doesn't just look redundant going down there. You may have a stone wall, a stacked granite wall, a piece of curbing on the side, so it's gonna look nice. So we just have to get the surveying done. It'll be 5 feet, 6 feet on those, new granite. The old granite's being used for caps on that side. And then whatever we have left over for granite from the Union Street, we're gonna take over to Vernon Street, where we left off on Vernon. We'll go over there, we'll replace Vernon Street sidewalk all the way down to the Howard and Vernon Street, and then we'll also be doing the intersections at Howard and Crescent where it meets Howard. Howard, Crescent, and Vernon. So that'll all be compliant there, because that is that area, Vernon, Crescent, and George Street is the water project, so they're actually cutting us a check for the mill and pave on that. So then that area will be done, and it will tie into Lower Union Street, and then after the curbing's done, we'll pave Lower Union Street, and that's where we'll leave off. The second round will get us up into the Millbrook area. We're gonna work our way from the backside out. We won't get the whole project done this year. We're gonna start on all the dead ends and the cul-de-sacs, work our way out so the traffic can go in with the big trucks. We'll pull everything out, and we'll get the main roads done next year up there. Also, the other section, like I said, I touched base on, will be Crescent, Vernon, and out to Howard Street and George Street. That'll be all repaved as well. So that'll be our second round. And I think that's about it besides the curb job. So you do know the curb job we talked about with Spring Street. And then the only other curb job we're trying to get in this year would be Liberty Street. So it would be where the water project was. We'll go from Mary Lou's, that intersection, all the way up to Pleasant Street. And then we hope to finish from that Pleasant Street intersection to the VFW. So that would be next year. So, and then...
Is that when Liberty will be paved?
Liberty Street, we actually just had a nuclear density test done on that, so we're waiting for the compaction ratings to come back.
Okay.
So that was just done 2 weeks ago. So if they tell us, we'll be all right. Keep in mind, that's not a full wreck, so if it was a full wreck, we would get, plenty of compaction on it. We wouldn't have to worry about it. But obviously, we don't want to pave that road if the trenches aren't completely settled yet. We don't want to get into that issue. If we get into that area, we may end up doing just doing a quick overlay to get through the summer, and then we'll have to that is going to be a mill and overlay next year. So, but we plan on getting the curbing and the sidewalks done this year. So on that area, that will actually clean that area up quite a bit. So that Liberty will either be the end of this year or it'll be spring of next year. So we'll have to wait till that comes back. Any questions on anything, or?
Any questions from the board? I got one quick question.
Yeah.
The boards at Reed's Pond, were you coordinating that with?
Yeah,
Mass
we actually
DOT?
we just met with DOT last week. So they came out. They're not confident on doing it right now because the flow is still pretty tremendous right now. So it's coming over the boards pretty hard. So we're going to look at it at the end of July. That'll be the first look. They'll come back out. So, and then what it is, the process they're talking about actually prying it up, to ease it up, and then work the board out. The boards are approximately 10 inches in height. So, from what we know, we actually, since we started talking about that, you can't obviously get under and see what the height of the boards are, or the thickness, because they're completely submerged underwater at this point. So it's not a safe task at this point. So they're going to come back at the end of July, and then they think during the dry season we'll be able to start prying that up. So, all right. Any other questions on anything? Or?
I think I have a conversation with every week with Dave saying, are my boards out yet? So, I mean, for those residents watching, it's not that we're unaware, and we are trying to work with the state. We have all the go-aheads from conservation. They're just trying to get into a situation where they feel safe pulling the boards. I do want to thank Dave also, if we haven't already. Dave really designed and his guys installed this park. That's some of that 150 special projects money we use for some matching grants and things that we're able to do, but cleaning up Town Hall, which has been to the side, and certainly working with us on all of the ADA projects as well as the rail trail. There is a handicapped ramp in the lower parking lot that people can use to get in the building. And I don't know if we've scheduled that yet, but Dave and his
yeah, we
department are
have.
doing that
Yep.
fairly soon in order to be in compliance. Again, we're doing everything we can to be in compliance with ADA. So I want to,
Yeah.
saving us a lot of money, have the help from the highway department rather than subbing everything out.
Dave, I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Is MassDOT aware, we believe we're getting a lot of I&I into the sewer system, which is kind of really impacting the sewer treatment plant when we have a lot of rain and we end up on the emergency high flow bypass.
Yeah.
And last time I talked to John Laughlin, he thought that it may have something to do with the additional increased groundwater level in the pond. Have you communicated that to
They
MassDOT?
we aren't in any discussions on that as far as what the,
Yeah, because it could
the
just,
chemical
I'm just
balances.
fearful that it may cause a bigger problem downstream with the sewer. And
Yeah.
maybe if they knew the urgency, how that's impacting our system,
yeah.
it may, cause them to move up their timetable a little bit.
Well, it's
possibly.
not that it's that they can't. There's no accessibility to it right now. If anybody's ever looked at it, it's literally 2 cheek walls on either side of where the dam boards are, and there's literally, you can't access the boards at this point because the water flow is over it. Once the water drops down, it has dropped down tremendously. What is it?
Access it from the water? If
Could
they
we
had-
access it?
Yeah.
Well, that
If
part
you
of the
had-
pond is probably
something-
7 or 8 foot deep,
Yeah,
but
but
the
you
flow
had-
of water there is vast. It's not a safe situation, so, yeah.
I'm thinking like a boat, like an actual boat,
I-
like
they've
to push
tried-
out there and like
from-
with
from
a
pa-
piece
yeah.
of equipment on it to lift it.
Well, there's
you know?
from past experience, that was done, I think, 20 years ago, and I know, Alan, we've heard about the history of it,
Yeah.
and literally, it got pulled over, and the guy went over the dam. So we'll probably stay away from that, so for right now. It's in DOTs, we're literally gonna be an observer to it, and they're gonna provide the labor, the manpower, and they're gonna handle it, so.
No harbor master?
If I was able to, I would have cleaned it a long time ago. It's really, really quite simple. Pry bar, lift it up, put a shim in there, feeds out a 1/4 inch on top of everything else. Water goes down.
A younger Larry might have done that himself.
Wasn't he the guy who swept under
The guy with the broken neck can't do anything anymore. I'm a you boss.
Any other questions, or?
Any other
Well,
questions?
great job doing, Dave. Thank
All
you.
right,
Dave.
thanks.
Appreciate the update.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, next up on the agenda, item number 6, discussion of dissolution of the Teen Center Advisory Board. Gene Blaney, you want to come up and speak on this?
I thought Dave was going to keep talking.
I was gonna hold you.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So, as you all know, that we've been discussing the Teen Center Board all year long, looking for volunteers to come and volunteer at the Teen Center. We added more staff. Both myself and Deirdre have been attending their meetings. I've actually been down in the Teen Center for a few nights here and there, sprinkled about, and it's going well. But the Teen Center Board is tired. They can't do it all, and so we've taken a vote on the Youth Commission Board, and the board voted unanimously that they'd be willing to take on the Teen Center as another program. So we're asking the Board of Selectmen tonight to dissolve the Teen Center and allow the Youth Commission Board to take that over. I do have something at the appropriate time. I'll read exactly what Jackie, who from the Teen Center Board, wrote. I'm here on her behalf because she can't be here tonight. Neither can any of the other members. They were working late, so, and she's out of town.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that we had a long-time volunteer as treasurer, like 12 years or something. 15 years, who was done. And his kids are older and grown, and he stayed on, and he's done. And then we have another board member who has since moved out of town, who can no longer be a board member. So now the Teen Center is a board member of 1, and then me and Jean, who happen to show up occasionally. I think you more than I. But so I think it's time to do that. Additionally, the staff, really the bulk of the staff, there are part-timers who come in that do some of the I guess supervising, but it's Jean's staff that's really providing the organization on a day-to-day basis. So and Jean really has control over the building, so it makes sense for her board to sort of take that on. And I know there's been some discussion with the remaining member of the teen center, whether or not she wants to maybe apply to be on the youth commission board. Actually, did she send an email? I think she did.
So I have an email here, not regarding that, but I've been in contact with her. We haven't exactly connected to have more of a discussion of what that means. So, so hopefully when she gets back in Massachusetts, we can talk about
Yeah,
that.
she's away, but I did read the statement. I'd like you to read it if you could.
Okay. So it's a little bit long, but it's, Dear Sir and Madam of the Rockland Board of Selectmen, today as you discuss the dissolution of the Rockland Teen Center Advisory Committee, it is with great pride that I share with some success that the Teen Center has been in its 24th year of operation. First, an acknowledgement to all of the residents of Rockland who have made the Teen Center their home at some point in its long history. Each and every face that entered the building was loved and cared for by all the volunteers who walked through the, each and every face that entered the building was loved and cared for by the volunteers who walked through the door. We are so grateful that we are able to serve this community in this capacity for so long. Next, an acknowledgement to all of the volunteers who impacted the lives of the teens that came to see us each week. It's people like you who have kept this program running so successfully for so long, for as long as it has. Those who have donated their time, their money, and their hearts, thank you for helping to make the Rockland a better place to live every single day. A special acknowledgement for Mark Underwood, who has volunteered as treasurer of the Rockland Teen Center Advisory Committee for close to 15 years. He always talks about the program with so much pride. He remembers the days that it ran for 2 nights every weekend, and there were mountains of volunteers and kids who would join for 2 nights. He has watched the program evolve to incorporate field trips, dances, raffles, and so much more. The advisory committee would like to extend its deepest gratitude for his years of service. And another acknowledgement is Kirsten McDonald, who is also known as Mrs. Mack to all of the kids. She is a force of good nature to the program. Her week in and week out dedication to creating the programs and programming for the kids has been inspiring. She truly loves each and every kid that walks through those doors, and I'm sure that most will attest to the fact that she has impacted their lives in a positive way as they've outgrown the program and taken on more responsibility as members of our community. We are excited for the next phase of the Rockland Teen Center as it goes under the umbrella of the Rockland Youth Commission. Jean and her team are equipped with the future heart and soul of that the program deserves, and are the right people to continue the program and keep its future bright. To close, I would like to say thank you for your time serving our community, and we are looking forward to a bright future of the Rockland Teen Center and the town of Rockland. Best regards, Jackie Gervais. So just so you know, Jackie's been on the board for a few years too, and she too puts her heart and soul into the whole program. Being a young person in our community, she spent a lot of time and put a lot of thought into the programming that went throughout, at least this year, which is the most that I've been involved in it. So I'd like to personally thank her for doing that, and I hope that she stays on as a member of our board, as if Kirsten could possibly stay on as well. They're excellent people. They really, really love the program, and they love those kids. So with that, I guess I'll
make a motion that the board vote to dissolve the teen center contingent upon the program being carried on by the youth commission.
Second. All in favor? Unanimous vote. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Thank you for reading the letter. It was actually inspiring to know that so many people have, contributed so much over the years.
Yeah.
And I think like any other program in town, people forget that when it started because they're there for their own kids. And sometimes, they get harnessed to stay again and again because we don't have enough volunteers.
Yeah. And to echo what you've said time and time again, this doesn't mean that we don't need volunteers. This doesn't mean that the program is going to exist without those volunteers. We still need those volunteers, and I need those volunteers in the Youth Commission. So I'm Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturdays and Sunday, you can find me in the building. So they're more than welcome to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
Okay, next up, we have item number 7. Credit rating report. Does Mr. Hart want to handle this one? Or does Mr. Chalker want to handle this one?
I'll give you all 1 second. Thank you. Thank you, Gene. As all, I have to say, Jean's one of the hardest working department heads we have. She's really put her heart and soul into the Youth Commission, and is a huge advocate, has taken on extra roles, whether it's establishing the farmers market and coordinating all that. She's just another one of those town managers that we have, department heads, that really does go over and above. She's not punching in and clocking out. She's just dedicated herself to the position. So anything we can do to help. Credit rating report. In your books, there really is a very lengthy report, and I can't possibly overemphasize how important this is, and certainly a source of pride, I think, to the town and all of us that have endeavored from way back when to reverse the ship of state here in the town of Rockland. From the time where you had no money and deficits and layoffs, a negative bond rating. Moody's rated Rockland as a negative outlook. When we borrowed money to build do the school project, we had to use the state guarantee. We had to go to the state and ask to be able to use the state bond rating. As you can see from the information that I put in your book, all of the things, what a AA rating and a AAA rating means. We have come a long way from that negative rating to an A- back in, I believe, 2012, to a AA- in 2014, and we just received word, and you can see the chart, I think, on the second page of, at the bottom of the first page, actually, of the enclosed documents that I gave you, that we are one away from the highest possible rating the town can have financially, which is truly, and again, I cannot emphasize enough, from a negative rating to a AA in the town of Rockland in 10 years, and that's been due to the efforts of certainly town meeting, the finance committee, numerous members of the Board of Selectmen, past and present, to get us to this point. There are some towns, although they are maybe a little more well-off than Rockland, that have moved up, but a AA rating, according to this, is better than a AA plus, which was a little surprising to me, but excuse me, it may not be. It's an AA2 is what I meant, Standard & Poor versus Moody's rating. However, it means an awful lot. This is actually equal to what the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' current bond rating is. And so for us to have attained that rating, especially as we're going to ask you to sign a bond note right after this, is a huge credit to everybody. We do have to recognize certainly Mr. Hart and his efforts working with the Finance Committee. We've gone from, I think, as you know, I think we had $10 or $100 or something silly in our stabilization account just to say we had one. Yeah. Just in order to say we had one, and we know we should have one, but we had no money to put in it at this time, to 5% of our levy limit at this point. We're somewhere in the vicinity of $1.8 million. We raised about $36 million for property taxes towards our overall budget. So it has not been easy, and it was always something that I said I wanted to see us do before I retired from Rockland, and we're just a hair above faster than schedule, and certainly a credit to everybody. There's a lot of information in there if anybody wants to look at it, and we will certainly get a couple of these documents up online, but great credit certainly to everyone's effort and the hard work we do to try and keep our eye on the finances here in town. As you know, we try not to spend money that we don't have in-house, and we try to make sure that we don't overestimate revenues and make sure we budget accordingly. So just to let the board know, I hope you are happy with that news.
I'd like to add, if I could, that we had a very successful bond sale today. And
That's item 8.
just because
I didn't
of the
know if you
credit
wanted to
rating-
comment on item 7.
the credit rating brought that upon us, and this is the first time that I'd seen Fidelity Capital Market actually bid on our bond. And we ended up with a very favorable rate, and we had a huge bond premium, about $1.3 million. Because of a vote that we had taken previously at town meetings, we were able to actually reduce the note directly up front, as opposed to previously to make us take that premium and amortize it out over the loan. So we were able to reduce it right up front, which reduces the interest across it as well. So an effective rate of 2.852%. So
Okay, so moving to item number 8.
If you want to put people to sleep, talk about bond ratings. But we'll go from this to insurance. However, it is huge for the town of Rockland and certainly a credit to everyone involved.
Item number 8 would be request to approve bond sale. Mr. Hart.
the bond went out, we looking to borrow $11 million. As you know, we've taken care of the roads, water mains, Memorial Park. And with the $1.3 million bond premium that we received, we've been able to reduce it down to a little over $10 million, $10,175,000. You'll see those in the vote that actually you'll be taking to approve this tonight, that I believe Alan will probably read into the record. It was a very successful sale, and I'm very proud of all the departments in town, the cooperation that I had, and direction as well from the treasurer to work forward to complete this sale. It took a lot of effort from many of the departments in town, and I'd like to thank them. And that's about it on this.
We do have to read much of this into the record, Mr. Chairman, if I might.
You may.
And then the clerk or vice chairman will have to sign the document, which is in my office. Voted that the sale of the $10,175,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2018 bonds of the town dated May 25th, 2018, the bonds to Fidelity Capital Markets, a division of National Financial Services, LLC, at a price of $11,187,741.27 and accrued interest, if any, is hereby approved and confirmed. The bond shall be payable on May 15th of the years, and principals, amounts, and bear interest at the respective rates as follows. I will defer to the chart as printed. Be it further voted that in connection with the marketing and sale of bonds at the preparation, distribution of a notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated May 1st, 2018, and the final official statement dated May 15th, 2018, the official statement, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, and approved and adopted. Further voted that the bonds shall be subject to redemption at the option of the town upon such terms and conditions are set forth in the official statement. Further voted that the town treasurer, the Board of Selectmen be and are hereby are authorized to execute and deliver continuing disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C 2-12 in such form as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the bonds for the benefit of the holders of the bonds from time to time. Further voted that we authorize and direct the treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedure in such form as the treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or if the procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain tax-exempt status of the bond. Further voted that each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them, or any votes of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes.
So moved.
All those in favor? It's a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Anybody want me to read that again for further clarification?
Well, then,
Thank you.
Okay, more good news, right? Item number 9, report of the Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee. Mr. Ryan.
The Open Space Committee's been meeting for the last 6 months or so in partnership with the Massachusetts Area Planning Council Committee and Council to update Rockland's open space plan. The committee's been working very hard. I should say Marcy Birmingham is really the one who does the work, the heavy lifting for us, and the rest of us help her out as best we can by just gathering the information that she needs. Ralph Wimmer's here from the Mass Metropolitan Area Planning Council to give a talk on our Open Space Committee meeting, and I just want to thank the committee and thank Ralph for all the work he's done here. We couldn't do it without you, and come on up, Ralph. I could spend an hour telling everybody what a great guy you are, but they already know that.
That might be more boring than the bond. Good evening. So I'm Ralph Wilmer, Principal Planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. So as was mentioned, we've been working on the Open Space Plan update for last few months, and we're very close to completion. A draft was sent out to you. We've received some comments, and we've incorporated those. We just have a few loose ends to tie up before it's ready to be submitted to the Division of Conservation Services, which is the agency within the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs that is charged with reviewing and approving the plan. So, you know, we're gonna format the document. We're gonna make it look nice. We're going to we need to add a few little pieces here and there. We've been tinkering with the inventory to make sure the numbers match up, so we still need to check a couple of things on that. But once it's ready to be submitted, typically what happens is that the plan is submitted, and then DCS, the Division of Conservation Services, usually issues a letter that indicates that the plan has been provisionally approved. She typically winds up making some comments or asking some questions that we follow up on. But as soon as the document is provisionally approved, the town will be eligible for applying to the Division of Conservation Services for 2 different types of, or 3 different types of grants. One that deals with land acquisition, one that deals with park acquisition, and then there's another Land and Conservation Fund grant as well. So as soon as the plan is provisionally approved, the town is eligible for applying for any of those grants for a 7-year period. These plans are good for 7 years, so we assume that it'll be fully approved sometime in 2018, which means that the plan will be good till 2025. The grant application deadline is July 12th, so we see no reason why the plan wouldn't be submitted well before that deadline. So if the town is interested in applying for some grants, you'd be eligible to do it this round. So if the applications are due mid-July, then typically the decisions are made October or November of this year. And there's certainly a number of things in the plan when you look at the implementation table where the town might be interested in submitting a grant application, whether it's for acquisition of some additional land or whether it's for improving any number of the parks that are targeted in the plan for improvements. So
That's a quick summary. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Any questions from the board?
I don't have any. Thank you again.
Okay.
I really want to thank Ralph. Really, you've done a great job. You've been
Thank you.
with us now for through quite a few of these processes, and you've eased the
It's my home away from home.
The pain of transfer, if you will, from becoming eligible for a lot of money. And we've
Yeah.
got a lot of money through the town administrator's office, Marcy, Birmingham, and Metropolitan Area Planning Council. The whole works. So everything's working in our favor, and I'd like to thank everybody, Donald, and all the people that take the time to get involved in these committees. And again, I'm going to reiterate, Ed, we need more of you. I look in the room, I see all these people out there, and they're wonderful people, all involved in the town, and we could use a lot more of yous, and you meet a lot of people, have a lot of friends.
Mr. Chairman, and again, Ralph just touched upon it, but by getting this plan done, it does a couple things. It makes us eligible for additional grants. It also makes us eligible one step further to do a complete plan for the town when we have to go forward for a master plan. This was one of the pieces of the puzzle that we've been aiming towards progressively by getting, you have to fill in the blanks before they let you go for that final grant. So, Ralph, I want to thank you.
Yep,
You
thank
also
you.
mentioned
Thank you.
provisional approval?
I'm sorry?
You need provisional approval of the plan?
Of this plan?
What do you need from the board tonight?
Oh, there's no official vote that you have to take. I mean, you can certainly take a vote to approve the plan as drafted or adopt the plan if you want to do that. But what we will need from the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board at a minimum are letters of support or approval, because they get appended to Section 10 of the plan. And if you need any model letters that other boards have written for other plans, I can provide them, but they don't have to be anything particularly lengthy, but just some letter that confirms that both the planning board will obviously have to do
Typically,
it.
we would have to take a vote in order to provide.
support
the
it.
letter.
Yeah, so,
I move to accept the plan as presented with the updates that you said you need, and submit a letter in support of the application of the plan.
Second?
All those in favor? It's unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
okay, thank you, and then I'll work
Great
with
job.
Marcy on getting that letter done.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.
Always.
Great job as always, seriously.
Thanks, Ralph.
And by the way, she works under our office, the Board of Selectmen's office.
Well, I like to,
Oh, so you
Yeah.
can get credit for it too.
I suppose. What do I care?
Okay, next up on the agenda, we have item number 10, establish a stormwater committee. So I don't know if I should go with Mr. Chalker or Ms. Hall on this one, you know?
Ms. Hall certainly knows more about stormwater than I do, but she's been doing an awful lot of work in this area, as you know. As a result of town meeting action and the budgetary provisions we took, we still have to establish a committee as part of our attempts at compliance with the, is it MS4? Am I
Yes,
saying that right?
NIFTY's
Look
MS4,
at-
yes.
Look at what I've learned.
NIFTY's, yeah.
So we do need to
It is.
establish a committee.
It's gonna take effect.
Now, and there should be a member or the department head, but I don't want to necessarily commit the chairman of any of these boards. It could be their designee. So I've included a suggestion inside your books, Mr. Chairman, that we establish a committee of one member or designee of the following boards: the Planning Board, the Conservation Committee, the Sewer Commissioners, the Zoning Board of Appeals, a member of the Board of Selectmen, the Building Inspector or his designee, and any at-large residents who get excited about stormwater regulations. We would certainly appreciate volunteers, if the board would be, but we do have to establish a committee, and then we will have to actually have it approved at the next town meeting to become a permanent committee going forward.
We actually have some high school students, I think, who are interested before.
We have potential stormwater committee members.
I just want to speak a little on this. So The rationale for a stormwater committee is that it meets the regulatory requirement of the second minimum control measure of the permit. You're required to have public involvement, and the easiest way to meet the public involvement piece is to have a stormwater committee. That is an easy checkbox. What I've read and envisioned about stormwater committees is that they're best used when it comes to also dealing with minimum control measure 1, which is the public outreach component and getting information out to residents. What's the best way to get it out there? What sort of information do we need to get out there? What media should we use, and that type of stuff. The rationale behind the different boards is that, as I mentioned at town meeting, the MS4 permit it touches lots of different departments and impacts lots of different branches of government. And these are the ones, I believe, that at least the elected or appointed boards that would be most significantly impacted. By bringing them together in one place, it will help us when we need to do our notice of intent, which will need to be filed in September. Environmental Partners is helping us with that, as well as when we have to do our annual report in June. So we'll have one body where the person or the consultant helping us can go to get that information. So
do we have a motion?
Can I just ask a couple of things here quickly?
Sure.
Just for the record, how often do you think this committee would meet, and how many at-large residents would we allow? I mean, 1, 2, 3, 10? Whatever, the more you add, the more you need to get a quorum.
I would say it would meet quarterly, probably 4 times a year at most. The number, it doesn't matter. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 9.
7.
So 3 at large?
3 at large?
3 at large, if we can find them.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Ms. Hall as our member.
Second.
We should establish the committee.
Let's establish the committee first.
I'll establish the committee first.
Second.
All those in favor?
Do we have to set a number, because we don't want it to have...
We said 9, I thought. Ed
9?
said 3 at large.
Okay, all right, sorry.
That's okay.
Yep.
Okay, motion to appoint Ms. Hall.
All those in favor? It's unanimous vote. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
When's your first meeting?
There's your water drain. Let's see.
Okay, next up, we have item number 11 on the agenda is the host community agreement discussion, and that is regarding a retail marijuana establishment. You'll find in your books, there was a sample host community agreement. I think that was, I think components of it were drawn from other communities who currently have one. And I believe that our land use council had reviewed this one. I know that some of us had made comments, and some of those comments are actually in your books. And we just really need a discussion because we actually have the potential for a couple of recreational marijuana, or retail marijuana, which is recreational use, will maybe put an application in for a license. So we need to make sure that we have something at least in the works, even if it has to be amended or something, even if we call it a provisional agreement that subject to town council, so that we can at least start to establish negotiating with somebody so we don't miss that opportunity. Does anybody want to have any questions or want to talk about the agreement as it's drafted?
Just one comment in item 7 regarding the hiring commitment. I think this was Attorney Galvin's comment asking if there was any other group. I would also add to the list that is currently there, the Rockland Regional Adult Learning Center. Rockland Regional Adult Learning Center. That's that could be a huge pipeline of interested people.
One of the things that we have done, even when we have done TIFs, is included the local hiring provision where possible.
Mhm.
But, and my guess is, and nobody has ever squawked or balked at any of that, and we do get periodic notification even from some of the TIFs that we've put on our own website or done what we can to try and advertise that a position might be open. That they do want to hire local. It actually improves the likelihood of people showing up to work, bad weather or whatever. So if you have any recommendations like that, Mr. Mullen, I would, my guess is that they would accept them. But if we can outline them, as you say, it would be helpful.
I just have one outstanding comment. The comments in the margin are mine, but
Oh.
it's okay. No, but number 12, the reopener provision, I guess my comment to Attorney Galvin was that based upon the language, that if the town renegotiates a better agreement in favor of the marijuana retailer, if it's more in their favor, then then prior contracts automatically are modified to represent those terms. And I'm not opposed to reopening them and that they may be modified. So I guess my issue is that with shall be modified versus may be modified
If
in that line.
And I know this discussion, if I could through you, Mr. Chairman, this discussion has come up time and time again, and it's often the same thing we have even with union negotiations. If we cut a better deal with another distributor, we allow someone else to come in, agreement number one says, wait a minute, now I'm paying 4% and you're letting this person in at 2%. So it's a one-size-fits-all that says, if we were to change, then we have to change for everybody to keep the playing field level. It's almost like asking somebody to pay more for their liquor license than one liquor store to pay more for their license than somebody else. So this whole provision is just to say equal footing for all.
I like them. I mean, like I said, the contract's only 5 years, because then after that, I mean, I just don't understand. That's why I think that may is be more appropriate than shall, because the terms of the agreement aren't that long to begin with, unlike union contracts, which are renegotiated every few years. But I don't know, I just feel like it's, my concern was that we're allowing future boards to I guess, renegotiate, or not even renegotiate, just unilaterally change terms of contracts that were negotiated by this board, for instance. That's my opinion. I'd love to see a may instead of a shall, but that's just me.
Any other comments from anybody else regarding that provision or other provisions in the agreement?
Nope. Looks pretty good, actually.
That makes sense, though, like what the Deidre mentioned. I mean, like, it gives everyone the same flexibility, so I don't have a problem with that comment. I mean, that change.
I think the intent of the agreement initially was when we had, prior to you being on the board, we had negotiated some medical marijuana host community agreements. And similar language was added because we didn't know who was going to be the license holder. So we didn't want to go through and cut a deal with a host community agreement with one vendor, and then another vendor who could actually build it may be looking for something more favorable, and then go through and undermine someone else who was in the process, or vice versa. You know, somebody who agreed to things that just wouldn't work, and then we have nobody because the deal was too good to be true. So
I just think the difference there is that the medical goes forever. It's not a 5-year gig, where this is a lot more short-term. I mean, honestly, if there was a shell there, the reality is, because it's such a short-term deal, it probably won't even impact anybody. That's just, I would just like to give more flexibility to future boards.
we could also put shall not. I write those a lot in my contracts. But to your point, though, may and shall actually do mean two different things. So we can certainly look at it. And I know that Mr. Galvin had reviewed it, but have we had Mr. Clifford's firm review this yet, Ellen?
I don't believe they have.
So we could actually have Mr. Clifford's firm review it as well, and see if,
Well, if everybody else is okay with shall, I'll go with shall. I'm not married to it. I'm just saying, I think it would give more flexibility to boards. That's just what I'm saying. I'm just putting
no,
my.
I
Well,
understand.
we are trying, you know, the board can certainly revisit this. I know that there are some people starting to chomp at the bit already. In fact, we have our first community hearing tomorrow night.
It's the beginning of the process. Well, if we can make this a live and breathe and document, we can actually make it provisional so that it's still subject to a vote of the board once the agreement's in place with whoever. So then at least
That
we
makes
can
sense.
start the negotiations with a potential applicant.
That makes sense.
So if somebody could make
A
that.
motion to approve this as a working document, a working host community agreement for the town of Rockland for adult use marijuana, like establishments.
Second?
Any other discussion? All those in favor? So that's a unanimous vote. Thank you. Okay, now, we have item number 12, which is payroll procedures. As most of us know on this board, and some people in the audience on other boards, we've had some difficulties in the past few months with some policy and some operational procedures as it's related to payroll. So what I want to say that our board had met in particular with the school committee board, and we had come up with some draft operational policy and some changes that are going to ultimately affect future employees of both the town and the school, as well as administrators, superintendents, accountants, business office, and as well as board members and whatnot as far as what we're trying to achieve here. It's a difficult issue to have in a town that's actually doing rather well financially, in a town that's advanced itself over the past 10 years. So it's an issue that's not taken lightly, and it's an issue that we as board members had chose to meet to resolve jointly. We're still in the process of resolving it. It's going to be an ongoing, it's going to be living, breathing, much like the document we just talked about. But the gist of it is we had come up with 10 items, and I'll just touch briefly on them. The items are going to be that they're going to be a high-level policy that'll be shared with our town administrator and our school superintendent once we finalize them. And they'll end up becoming directives at that point. The next step was to appoint a liaison on each side, and I believe the school committee met last night, and they had voted to support this item, as well as had chosen to appoint, I believe it was their newly elected school committee member to serve as a liaison. I had assigned our liaisons tonight, and the person for that would be Deidre Hall. She had actually, last week, which I might want to get off a little off subject, I had my first grandchild, and while we were at the hospital, I was unable to attend to this thing, so Deidre had kindly stepped in for me to help resolve that issue, and I think she was very effective in doing that with the cooperation of our town administrator, our town accountant, as well as school people across the street and school committee member, chair. So I think it was very effective in advancing where we were going. The liaisons are going to now meet with all sides so they can try to develop a standard operating procedure. We don't know what that procedure is actually going to become right yet. We're trying to determine what that's going to be so that the employees infected, the people who implement it, and also the boards and committees and all the acts can go through and come up with something that's going to work collaboratively for all parties. because this is what we're all trying to do. It's not a one-sided problem. I think both sides have acknowledged that we could both do a better job. And at the same time, I think both sides have acknowledged that we want to solve the problem, not only for this board, but future boards, as well as for future employees of the town. So we're trying to go through and take steps and measures that are going to actually hopefully resolve the problem. And not to say that we can resolve any problem, but we're going to at least make an attempt to resolve the problem jointly. Once those, we'll call them standard procedures, are developed, then we will go through and they'll be accepted and voted in open session by actually both committees. The liaisons will continue to serve until they're either reappointed or changed on an annual basis. Currently, we have some, we'll say, there's differences in the way payroll is actually processed, what backups provided, how the backups provided, what's available, what's not available. And we're working through those issues right now to make sure that we can do it in a timely manner that's accepted to all, and in a manner which is going to provide the information without compromising any employees, because they are employees and it's sensitive documents. So we're all trying to do that. We're also going to make every effort to make sure that payroll is processed, and we're also going to go through and make sure that both sides act in a very professional manner with regards to any communication. Like any issue, it's kind of like a family, you know. Some days we get along with family members, we're all close, we all work together, but sometimes, you know, we have disagreements with our family members. But it doesn't mean that we can't work through those, and it doesn't mean that we can't go back around and still make everyone part of the family. And I say that as family because I come from a large family, and I have to have a lot of my employees as family members. Sometimes we don't always agree on things, but at the end of the day, I know that if I need something, my family member will be there, and I'll make sure that it gets done. And I look the same way a lot of people in this room. I've been doing this for a long time here, and I think that we all want to have the same outcome. We just need to figure out how we're going to get there. And I think we're all working that way now. When we talk about confidential documents, there's particular instances because of, we'll say, programs or whatnot, that some employees, or we'll say some of the even residents, you know, as far as when you process not only payroll, but you process accounts payable items, that information actually has to remain confidential. So we're trying to ensure that it actually happens by having those statements redacted by the people who are actually in charge of these, okay? Now, I mentioned earlier that this is something that has been driven by the school committee and the Board of Selectmen. But this is something that once these policies are established, are actually going to apply across the board throughout the town. Because right now, we have some things that are done differently in one department to another department, and we want to try to make them so that it's more standard procedure. So the intent of the whole document is to know that it's living, it's breathing, it's a start, and by no means does it focus any blame on either side. We both acknowledge that. When I say both, I'm talking as committees, that we've acknowledged that there's a problem on each side that needs to be resolved by the fact that I think because department heads get sometimes territorial and protective of their employees, and rightfully so, I think sometimes it gets emotional. So when it becomes emotional, we needed to remove the emotions, and we needed to go through and make sure that these became a procedure and a policy long after I'm gone, long after anybody else in the room is gone. And so it's for the best interest of the town. So we've all agreed that we're going to go through this, work on it collaboratively, and we're going to go through and come up with something so that hopefully we can have it actually put in place so that we can actually start to implement it for our next fiscal year, which will be July 1st. And part of that is the school committee last night, although I didn't attend the meeting, they actually made some changes in the business department, which I think is a huge step in the right direction for making, at least working collaboratively towards a solution and resolution, because sometimes what happens is employees, through no fault of their own, are put in a position, and sometimes that position isn't what they were actually trained for or what they actually thought it was going to be. And because of that, sometimes there can be a disconnect, or there can be a change in how things work. And I'm actually pleasantly pleased, that the school committee has actually decided to go through and seek to hire a CPA-type, business-type individual to help run their business department, because it's part of the huge step that we talked earlier tonight about the bond rating. I mean, that's another piece of the puzzle, because we need to make sure that things are run efficiently. The school budget's a huge part of our town budget, and we need to make sure that things are done in a manner that are within the law, and at the same time done to know that the people who actually put us here understand that we take their finances seriously, because we do. And that's part of the reason why we're trying to work on this. And although payroll procedures in the past have been something that may not be seem like an issue, it's become an issue because we have, unfortunately, we have people who became emotionally tied to it. And I say that because they all take great pride in the fact that they do their job well, and they want to do their job well, regardless if they're the superintendent, the town administrator, the town accountant, whether they're the person processing the payroll in their each respective departments. So it's not a reflection of anyone to blame. It's a reflection of the fact that sometimes when people are too close to a problem, they can't see the problem. And I think that's where our boards come in, where we needed to go through and take a look at it from a different point of view, and understand that we need to give our employees, whether they work for the school or work for the town, the tools and resources to actually do the job right. Because I don't think we've supported them in that manner in the past. And until we find, I mean, it's like anything else in town, until we actually identify a problem, we can't work on solving the problem. And sometimes what might seem to be a minor problem on one side may be a major problem on another. I mean, we see that not only with this particular issue, we see that with other town issues, whether it was something at town meeting the other night, which would have been, the thought process of, we'll say, for example, the Lincoln School, or we'll say the distance where a recreational marijuana facility could be located, or whether we have a development going up in somebody's neighborhood. We have all these issues, but until we're aware, we don't actually know how to go about trying to prevent them or fixing them or helping to solve them. So it takes a lot.
Can
Yes?
I ask a question? Actually, I'll be really quick, because
Yep.
I know you guys had a big agenda today. It will take 30 seconds. I
Yep.
don't need a discussion or an answer. It was just an idea. You were asking for ideas Thursday night on the fire site, fire station site, excuse me. I thought of, they could put the fire department, they're looking for a school site too, right?
They
Put
are.
the fire department where the Jefferson School is, and then build, if the Lincoln School has to come down, you could build an awesome elementary school on that Lincoln School site. And the neighborhood's already school-friendly. The whole neighborhood is there because of that school. He went to grade school there. It's a very family-friendly neighborhood. It's already set up to have the school there, and I think it would be something that the neighborhood would really appreciate, and it would kind of solve two problems. It would also solve the fire department's problem of none of the sites had a pull-through access. They wanted a bay that you could pull through one side. Down on the Jefferson School property site, they'd be able to do that because they would be able to exit onto the main road, come home quietly down George Street in through the back entrance, and they could pull through the bays.
That's a little off topic. I only brought it
Yeah,
up.
sorry.
That's okay. I only brought it up because it was to show the fact that sometimes we can't identify problems that are brought to our attention. But in respect to your question, the school building committee meets, I believe, this Thursday at 6 p.m. It's an open meeting. It's over at the high school library, okay? And the school building committee has not even looked at a site. They've just started to hire an architect now, and they're gonna start the review process to identify any town sites, any existing sites. So they're just beginning the process. So I couldn't tell you, because I have no idea where that school may or may not be sited. With regards to the fire station, again, I'm not on that committee. The first meeting I attended was the other night. I listened. I think there was some people from your neighborhood who spoke, and I believe the committee has heard that. I believe it's gonna be something that's gonna be a process. But I really need to get back on point, so I don't mean to be disrespectful.
No, that's why I said I didn't need an answer or anything, you said you were looking for ideas, and I thought I'd throw it out there for somebody to think about. We just, when Rockland gets reimagined, we don't want it to be reimagined without the people who've already been here for 50 years, that's all.
Understood. But again, I think that'll be a town decision at some point. But getting back onto topic here, the whole idea behind, the premise behind this, to come up with some draft policies and changes and operational changes, is to actually put something in place, I mean, so that regardless of whomever is here at some point in the future, that things can still happen. So that was the idea and premise behind it, and we know this is still going to continue. We know this is going to be a working document, and we also know that this is just the beginning. And I want to thank the board members for their time when we had done this back in April. I want to thank the school committee for going out in front of this, because they've been in front of it, and they've actually taken a very active role in acknowledging some of the issues from their perspective, and have made steps to take corrective changes and actually bring this hopefully to some sort of future resolution with everybody. And I think it's been something that has been a long time coming. I know some of us are new to the board and may have not participated in some of these issues that have happened over the years. Fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to see it, from time to time, have had to participate in that, as well as some of the other members. So I want to at least say my piece. I don't know if anyone else has any comments on it from the board, but
I'd like to make a motion to accept or ratify, whatever the right thing is, the operational policies and changes as drafted coming out of the joint executive session, subject to the fact that, as we've suggested, this is a living document, and as we get more involved, things may change at the majority vote of both boards.
Second.
Well, any other discussion before?
I just have a couple of questions. I mean, what's the point of implementation of these policies? Because I was under the impression during our executive session that we were looking for a July 1 to have a final document.
We are looking to go through.
To implement by July 1?
Implement by July 1 was the intent. So that would be the new fiscal year. And we would also go through, and we still need to actually identify some of the procedures with impacted employees. And we also need to come back to each board with any forms or anything that would be in there. That was what was under the draft operational policy that we had all discussed that night. That was circulated to everybody, and then relieved through town council as well.
So I had expressed a few concerns to a couple members of the board. None of the changes were made, which, I mean, it is what it is. I thought we'd have further discussion before we went to vote with this. I understand the school committee voted last night. I mean, I think there are some things on here that I'm in 100% support of this draft. I'm 100% support of this continuing dialogue between the two boards and coming up with policy changes. But there are a few things to that point that, if we turn to implement, we don't even know if they're doable, if it's feasible, if our departments if our employees or their employees can do them. within the timeframes. To the point, we have it in here that the liaisons will meet. I think that's the first step. That is the creation of the document that we vote on. That's where we find out what the departments are doing, how the payroll procedure works as it is now. I mean, none of us are doing payroll every week, so we don't know what works, what doesn't work. We don't know if we have a 2 p.m. on Friday deadline, which I know we all talked about, and if it's doable, it's doable. But if we turn around today and we say let's implement this as policy, then we find out it's not doable. I mean, is it going to affect when people get paid? Is it going to have to be moved back a day? I mean, there's just some questions. I'm not against. I'm completely for it as a living, breathing draft. I'm completely for it, revisiting some of these things. I had asked some questions. Nothing was changed on it. I mean, even tonight, in the document it says said liaison will be voted upon, and it was just appointed. And that was one of the changes I asked for, was that we say that it says appointed by chairman. But we're going to vote on a document where we're not even following through with what we just said.
Any other comments? No, I'll get you after the board.
I'd like
Larry?
to say, all the years that we've been hanging around, Dick, this was a nice thing we got together the other night. Two boards, Rockland residents, if you will, to bring the whole problem out into the open, where we can all sit down and discuss it. And quite frankly, I didn't think we were at the stage that we were going to vote on anything tonight, but
It said statement.
Again, the living document type of thing, I understand that also. I thought we were going to sit down and do a little bit more.
I thought our boards would get together beforehand and
Right.
come up with something more final.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it to the chairman.
One second. Anyone else from our board first?
Like if I could just add anything, I think, like as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, this is these 10 items, like a really, kind of like an outline, to begin like a process, that will happen, can happen between the town, and the school department, with employees, with members of this board, and I think in my opinion, that's all we're seeking to do here. We're really seeking to create a process to make sure the issue or the challenges that have happened over the past year, we can move forward from that. I think, as you mentioned, also having our policies and our standard operating procedures in general, I think is helpful. I think one of the challenges that we've all had in this whole issue, and we have it in other issues also, is that we don't really have anything in writing to guide anything in town, and to begin that, through this our partnership, I think is something we discussed, we agreed upon a few weeks ago, and going forward, to actually have a process with everyone involved would be, I think, very promising. So that's all I have to say right now.
Finish my thoughts? I was quite finished at the time. I want to thank you guys for doing it. And again, we got things rolling, and if we have to vote to keep them rolling, I'm willing to do that. You know what I mean? I just want to, make sure that we're all sort of on the same page, and that nothing's going to be lost in the shuffle here. That's what I'm interested in. What are the things that we discussed? And the elephant in the room is playing nicely, or working together nicely from both sides. If there's a mistake made, there's a mistake made. It's not, there's a mistake made. You know what I mean? There are ways of getting the word over without having quite, and I understand how it gets. I mean, Dick and I stood nose to nose a couple of times and badmouthed the bejesus out of each other, and over issues that were very volatile at times years ago. I'm talking about many years ago.
The point is, Larry,
The point is
we live here.
Right.
We live here. We run the town. We hire people. They don't always come from Rockland.
Right.
We get along. We play well together.
Right,
We
but I
play
understand-
very well
I
together.
understand
We
that
have
because-
two good committees and boards, and we play well together.
Right, but
And
there
this
are-
is
there
where
are,
we're headed. This is where we're headed. This is good.
I just,
Go ahead.
Dan had asked to speak, so I just want to give Dan the opportunity as well.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for recognizing me, and for the members of the Board of Selectmen that have been willing to work with us and that have been willing to communicate with us in this issue over the course of the past several months. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been an issue that has been really, as Larry, you just put it, the elephant in the room for the better part of the last year. And I think so is because there has been too much latitude on both sides of the street here and not enough expectation or clear expectation of where we all exist and where we all operate. So for those three members of the Board of Selectmen that have been in active communication with me as the chairman of the school committee and with the superintendent working to find a solution on this, I thank you. For the comment tonight about that you didn't know that we were voting on this, Larry, I'm sorry about that. But there has been a draft circulating on this for quite some time now, and a final version that our school committee voted on last night unanimously. Because we are looking to, pardon me, I understand, let me finish, please. Please, that we understood that we were gonna pass, and this was gonna be a living document. We understand that changes may be made, and our boards, may need to make changes to this going forward, which is why we set up the system of having liaisons, so that our boards, and by honestly, more importantly, future boards may have the opportunity to have a forum to be able to communicate and to be able to solve issues. Our vote last night was to approve the minutes of our joint meeting, Michael.
Okay.
And to approve the product of that meeting.
As a
which
living
was
document.
which was the draft document that your vice chairman circulated to our committee, and then we circulated with our councils and with our committees. So quite frankly, when I found out today that a couple members of your board did not support this, I was quite disappointed in the sense that, can I finish, please?
You can,
And
sure.
that I was quite disappointed in the sense that I feel as though that the time when we were together in our joint meeting, Michael, you had the opportunity to share all these concerns, and you did not.
Oh,
I reached out to you in the past, and you did not share these concerns with our committee in the last 2 weeks. You waited until the time that we took this vote tonight to voice your displeasure about it, and that is unfortunate. So I hope that our committees can come to resolution on this, and that we can work together and have a clear environment going forward. If not, then I'm sorry to say that we're going to be back to square one, and we'll need to figure out another course of action. So for those of you that have worked with us, thank you very much. We hope that we will have a clear working relationship going forward, and thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chairman.
So just for point of reference, our agenda says statement regarding payroll procedures. I didn't get a chance to see the school committee agenda. I raised concerns to my board, to members of my board, and those concerns weren't addressed, and we do things in open session, and this was the opportunity. I wasn't told that we were going to be voting on anything tonight. In fact, I didn't find out till this afternoon when I ran into a member of the school committee that they voted last night. I didn't get a chance to watch the meeting last night. I'm for this moving forward. I am for it moving forward, but there were some changes that I felt needed to be made, or at least discussed, and to not have that opportunity. If it's a living, breathing document, that's great. If we can revisit it, that's great, because that's what we agreed on when we were leaving the room, and this was put together. This was put together as notes, but this, I'm with it. I'm with it, but we were asked what our opinions were, and I talked about it earlier. So I feel it's somewhat being misrepresented as saying that I'm voting against it. I'm not voting against it. There were some things I wanted to have clear, and when the implementation of this document would go in.
No, the motion still stands. It's
As a living, breathing document.
That was in the motion.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
You may.
When is the implementation date, number one,
That's what I asked.
of this document? Would it be immediate? Because if it's a living, breathing document, I would like that certainly the employees here at Town Hall have the opportunity to be heard as to whether or not it's a functioning document. The 2 p.m. Friday statement in item 7 is just not doable. We have people taking home work on weekends now. As it was, most town departments have to report by noontime on Thursday with their budgets. The school comes in at noontime on 12 on Friday, and this pushes that process back another 2 hours. It's just, it's not a doable document for the town employees. I mean, at a minimum, while this is a living, breathing document, can we maintain the status quo of noontime? or we may have to actually look at when checks get cut.
Do you have anything else?
Well, I may, but, I mean, noontime, 2 o'clock is just too late for the employees here to get the payroll done, 2 o'clock on Friday. It's been noontime all along, and that was by living, breathing, or a policy, as some people want to reduce everything to policy, that was agreed to by previous boards and finance committees. I mean, the financial people on both sides, the former superintendent, myself, certainly Mr. Hart. At some point, we reached an agreement to say, all right, you don't have to go to Thursday, but can you be done by Friday? And the town employees do all the other departments Thursday through Friday in anticipation that they will then pay attention from noontime Friday to the school department budget. This, moving it back 2 hours, really is a big thing. You know, and I mean, I can't...
If I can just point out that that was not a request made by the school department or the superintendent, but in our joint meeting was suggested by a vice chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Well, and Dan, I mean, I'm not being argumentative, I'm just talking about capability.
Neither am I, Mr. Chairman.
I'm just, and whether or not the vice chairman had the opportunity to speak with the finance department here, I don't know, but 2 p.m. is not a doable time for us. I would offer that, Dan, as the way we have been operating for the past probably 7 years, and to change that day. Well, all we're looking for is noontime on Friday.
All we tried to do, okay, both sides, you have to look at the fact that we have some, we'll say, I'll call them employee issues with one another as far as communications. I think the big part is communications, okay? I think mistakes get made on both sides. People are people, they make mistakes. We can only work to try to correct mistakes. We can only work to try to do things in a better manner. There's been a lot of unwritten policies. There've been a lot of unwritten, we'll say, I don't want to call them rules. I don't want to call them policies. But there's a lot of things that I see as I'm getting close to my term ending that I like to memorialize. And the reason I say that is we've all worked very hard over the past 10 years to bring the town back from where it was. When I first got on this board, as I said the other night at town meeting, we didn't have the money to buy a piece of property. We didn't have the money to keep employees. Never mind look to buy a piece of property. And we've come a great distance with the good work of people we've hired, whether that's our town administrator, our town accountant, whether it's the superintendent, the former superintendent. And everyone has worked to make the town better, as well as all the people and the residents have worked in cooperation to give us that. And the department heads, employees, everyone's doing that. We need to go through, as a committee, as a board, we need to make sure that we ensure that that good work carries on when the faces change, okay? Because faces change, they do. Things change in your life, things change, you know, politically, things change, you know, retirement-wise, work-wise, other opportunities, whatever may be the case. Sometimes things change. And we've always sometimes made the mistake of tying personalities to contracts. We've always made the mistake of sometimes tying things in to personality, emotionally. And unfortunately, when it's government, it has to be a process and a procedure. Not to say that those personalities don't help make government run better, more efficiently, and get things done quickly and more effectively, because they do. But as a government, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to make sure that things are in place to ensure that government can continue, regardless of who may be here, may not be here, on a board, as an employee, or as a resident at that point. I mean, the town goes on. It has to go on. And that was the premise of this entire meeting, was to try to find a way. As Mr. Laughlin had pointed out, it is a living, breathing document, and there's some things in here that may or may not work, or some things in here currently that may have to be amended or changed. When you talk about what is going to be implemented immediately, the same thing we've been that I've asked both of you to do privately, That's to make sure that we have communication, that we're courteous and professional with one another, and that we go through and reprocess to the best of our ability any payroll that comes through, provided that we have the means to process it. I'm not asking anyone to do anything they're not supposed to do. I'm not asking anybody to do anything that shouldn't be done, that is against the law. What I'm asking people to do is to work with one another to make sure, to the best of our ability, that our employees can be paid on time. And sometimes mistakes are made, and we've identified some of these mistakes actually during the course of this document being presented that still need to be vetted, they still need to be developed, and they still need to be further voted on. But I think the document itself is something that's a work, and certainly if 2 p.m. does not work currently for the department, I have no problem making an amendment to the 2 p.m. until we can go through, I'm not saying we won't, until we can go through, hold on, until we can go through and ensure that this will be implemented. We had talked about implementing if I'm not wrong, I'm going back to my notes, a 7/1 date to implement any future changes from the standard operating procedures that we would implement. In the meantime, I'll take you next, Jill. In the meantime, we were going to go through and go with the draft operational policies and changes. So, Jill?
Mr. Shaka, the board, Mr. Allard, we agreed in that room that this was a living, breathing document. And part of that was that we didn't feel like that we knew your day-to-day enough to be able to implement what, I'm not going to tell you how to change a tire if I've never changed a tire. I have, but that doesn't matter. I think the point is it wasn't us that said 2 p.m., not the school committee. And I think the point of having 2 liaisons is so that we can follow you guys, we can follow our side, and we can all start working together as mature adults working on the same team in this town. This town needs us to be mature, we all need to be on the same page, and we all need to figure this out. I think by creating the liaisons, it is creating our voices. We want to follow your process, we want to follow their process, and we want to get this done. That's what we agreed on. That's what this started. It is a living, breathing document. It can change. We don't know if it's going to change. We don't know if it's not going to change. But we're not going to get anywhere unless we get started. And that's what this was about, getting us started.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that, and I'm more than willing to work with anybody, anytime, anywhere. I really am. And I appreciate that by your own admission and/or some of the members of the board saying they are not the people that have to do the work, whether it's change the tire. I can tell you from this side of the street, 2 o'clock doesn't work. And whether or not...
It doesn't have to.
I don't know that I interrupted anybody. I'm just trying to say it's a living, breathing document, and if it's an implementation of July 1st and there can be amendments, we're more than happy. I can tell you, I've talked not only to Eric, but I've talked to other people involved in the staff about what can be done and how we can do that, and we're looking forward to reducing some of these things to writing. But there is a 2 o'clock statement in this draft policy.
Mr. Chairman,
That's all I'm asking, Dan.
Fine, that's not a non-issue for us.
Mr. Chairman,
We didn't say on the first one, so 12 o'clock's fine.
there's a motion on the floor. I would like to make a motion to move the question, and so that we can vote on the original motion. Can someone second my motion to move the question?
Second.
All those in favor of getting to the motion? All right, excellent. All right. My motion was to approve the draft, what is it? The operational policies and changes as presented as a product of the joint executive session meeting between the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, with contingent upon the agreement that that the boards agree that this is a living document subject to amendments and changes.
Mr. Chairman.
There is a second.
Amended, I guess, is what I'd ask.
Yeah, I'm going to make that motion to amend that back to 12 o'clock.
Second.
They're fine with it?
Okay, so we had a motion Then we had an amended motion to go back to 12 PM until we have a, what's your motion? To amend it for the time being?
Yes, just to, it's a
Until we
living
can-
document, so just amend it back to noon time, and if at some point in the future we come up with a different consensus, we'll talk about it then.
Yeah, Mr. Clifford?
Maybe if each board delegates their liaison to meet prior to the next meeting, just hold the 2 o'clock issue until your next meeting, so that that doesn't become a sticking point for the whole.
That's not necessarily, it's not a sticking point, Attorney.
We'll go for it.
It's not a sticking point.
Just so people are aware, I'm very well aware of why this is 12 o'clock. We had a long discussion about Monday holidays and I have no idea how this works, but the fact that there's a different deadline for Monday holidays than non-Monday holidays. So that is why the board, or our board, I think, came to the consensus of 2 o'clock, because somebody shouted out what the deadline was for Monday holidays and what the deadline is normally, and I think the middle of it was 2 o'clock. So there was some logic to why we did what we did, but I mean, if it doesn't work, I think it's something that Jill and I can work on.
It's not physically possible.
It's something that Jill and I can work on. We are competent and we can work on that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, am I allowed to speak on the subject that is completely revolving around my department? Please.
I said you could.
Thank you. I came here with a statement that I wanted to just read, if I could start with that first. And that's, I appreciate the time you've put into resolving the repeating conflicts with the school department and the accounting office. I will follow any of the Board of Selectmen's directives that the town administrator requests as to reasonably modify the duties and responsibilities of the town accountant within the parameters of the Mass General laws, town charter, and bylaws. Assuming that the operational policies and changes are still in draft form, I look forward to working with the Selectmen's liaison to the school committee to create a form and develop the statement of procedures. I did not know you were voting on this tonight either, because I didn't see it as being a vote on your agenda for the evening. Had I known that, I would have tried to grab more of you just to air some of the items that I had some concern with. Overall, I think the document is fantastic. Overall, when Selectman Hall approached me regarding coming up with some of the items that were going to be consistent items that we would work with the school on specific items, great idea. I thought that's fantastic. It makes things very crystal clear. I have 2 big issues with this. The first one is the 2 o'clock on Friday. It is not doable. It doesn't sound to me like it's a sticking point anyways with anyone. And if it is a Monday holiday, I believe it's actually always earlier than that. So this being the deadline as the ultimate deadline is really, it would give us no time to look at a payroll that it's huge. It's huge. The other problem that I have is with 6. And first of all, I want to make sure that everybody knows, I don't ever hold an entire payroll, ever. The items that are held on payroll are items such as I'm asked to pay out like leave time, a large sum of money that comes out. So people get their salaries every single week, it's $1,000, whatever. Then I get a request for someone that they're to be paid $5,000 in a week, or maybe more, 12. I've seen $24,000. I've seen very large sums of money be requested when people pay out. I look for the backup for those items that shows that the time is available. This is extremely reasonable. I've checked with many of my peers and the state on this here. These are very reasonable items. The Mass General law, the only authority that I have that has any teeth in the Mass General laws is the ability to stop something if I can't find that it is correct or if it's illegal, excessive, or fraudulent. How can I ascertain that something is correct if I don't get it? How can I go through and do my job without being able to say, listen, I can't pay something that I don't understand when it's to be paid for? I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for 21 years. I'm not unreasonable. The things that I ask for from every single department. I have done this job for you for a long time. And that item there, it removes my authority and responsibility as a town accountant under the Mass General laws. And I protest against that one. And I'm willing to work forward on this whole thing. I think it's a great idea. And I would love to standardize the items that I ask for each week, so it's very clear on what I'm looking for. That item, I protest that number. And the one after it, I beg you, please, give us noon time on that one there to go forward with this. And I really think, I don't understand what the rush is on this. Why can't we work further before this is adopted? Or put 6 on hold at least until I get a chance to really sit down with our liaison and go through the reasoning on why this is important and show some examples of why there's an issue, or possibly reword that item. I take real exception to that one item.
Well, I think to your point, there's a couple of items there. One is the fact that the liaisons are going to help develop procedures, a standard operating procedure with your department, the school department, and forms to help minimize or make sure that the correct backup is actually attached with requests, okay, that would meet the needs of your department as well as the needs of their department to make sure that it's tracked. I know since all this has taken place, there's been talk about some software that could be shared between. I know there's been talk about possibly, we'll say, changes in how payroll is actually applied. When I say applied, by hours worked versus when it's called in, okay? So a lot of things, everyone has been enlightened. But as Jill had said earlier, we need to start somewhere. And we're not saying that it's entirely broke, but we're saying it's broken enough that we have to take some action. And with your help, with the school help, with the liaison's help, I think all these things are achievable and solvable in a short period of time. The idea was to go through and come up with a standard procedure that could be implemented for July 1 for the new fiscal year. We know it's going to be difficult with the end of the school year, especially just based on the fact that teachers by nature, a lot of them take their summer vacation, their salary, sometimes they take in a lump before summer. So we understand that that's going to be difficult. And we weren't not cognizant of that, because we're very cognizant of that. As Selectman Hall had said earlier, when we talked about the 2 p.m., that was designated so you'd have one time versus 2 sets of time for a holiday. So we may have got that one wrong, but that's the beauty of a living, breathing document, that it can be changed and it can be worked. And I believe there's already been a motion from Mr. Ryan to go to 12 p.m. So we're not looking to make your job harder. What we want to do, we want to do entirely the opposite. We want to make your job easier. We want to make the job over at the school business department easier, and we want to make life between both departments so that, you know, we're brothers or sisters again, or family again, because as I said before, sometimes, you know, we work so closely together that sometimes we lose sight of what we're both really trying to accomplish at the end of the day. And that's really to move it forward for Rockland and for the citizens of Rockland. I mean, as much of these as appear to be minor items, we know that both sides have spent an extreme amount of time, and those efforts could be better utilized elsewhere for the town. And we're not saying it in a bad way, we're saying it in a manner that we recognize that, and we want to make sure that we take that time and effort and we can apply it to make things better for your departments, better for you as an employee, and better for all town employees. And I think this document actually speaks volumes about the spirit of both committees willing to step in and try to make this not an employee issue, but a procedural issue. And I know that it's difficult, and I'm not in your shoes, Eric, because a lot of this affects your department, and by no means is it a reflection of what you've done or how you're doing your job. It's a reflection of it's not working well enough, in our opinion, our board's opinion, and we want to see that better. And we need to give you the tools to do that. And the way we could do that, honestly, was to go through and come up with some procedures that would work. I mean, I don't know, I mean, we have a book every time we come to a Board of Selectmen's meeting. We have to follow something in order to get something done. And it's very similar with procedures over there. We need a form, because if Eric's not here one day and someone else is there, they need to know what's going to happen. If someone else is over there in their department, they're not there, they need to know what's going to happen.
We have volumes of that, you know. In the
I'm not saying you don't, Eric. But even with all the volumes we have, we all know, honestly, we've spent far too much time on this issue across both sides of the aisle. And I'm not blaming anybody for it. I'm not gonna blame anybody. I'm just saying we've spent far too much time, and I think that both sides have some culpability in that.
Mr. Chairman?
And again, I'm not saying it in a bad way, but I'm saying it in reaction because it's human nature. And I know myself, you know, I try as much as I can, and honestly, lately, I've been struggling with it, if you want to know the truth. So it's very difficult, it is, to have enough composure to realize that you've made an error and how you go about fixing that error. And sometimes it's very difficult to convey that to the other side because nobody likes to, unfortunately, we're all human. Nobody really likes to admit that we're wrong. That's one of the hardest things that it takes for people to say is that I made a mistake. But but I was taught early on, it's only a mistake if you have to throw it away. And I don't think we're throwing anything away here. I think we're actually taking it, and I think we're gonna be able to come out of this with something that's gonna work for both sides. And I honestly think that this is gonna help bring the school, the town closer together and make them as one. I mean, we've been working well together with them. They've worked well with us. I mean, I said it at town meeting. We had articles that we didn't have enough funding for. Okay, although we read the articles, we also understood their cooperation with us that we needed to do other things in town. And we're trying to do other things in town with respect to make sure that everything works. I don't want you to take it the wrong way, Eric. It's no reflection on what you've done. It's no reflection on what you've done either, Alan.
Mr. Chairman, and if I might, we're both on board, and other financial people here on the town side that I've spoken with are more than willing to enter into discussion and meet with the liaisons. It's just, the concern was that some policies would be implemented without some of the people that are developing these policies actually having the knowledge of what it requires. One of the great concerns was simply that 2 p.m. The other thing, standard operating procedure makes it easier for everybody. So as far as that goes, as long as we have a living, breathing document, we're going to have the opportunity to meet with the new school committee member, and congratulations, Jill, and Deirdre to work that out.
I'm going to restate my original motion, changing it to noon, with amending the document to noon.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, so we have a vote. And again, this is a living, breathing document. This is something to go through. And I think, honestly, I think this is a step in the right direction, and it shows cooperation from both sides, as well as from our town administrator. And thank you, Ellen, for your comments, and as well as our town accountant. Thank you for your comments, Eric. And we want to make this work, so I look forward to the liaisons getting together and starting their work. Now, we have, next up on the agenda, we have town administrator's report and correspondence.
We just did.
We did.
I restated the motion with the 12 p.m. We got it.
Wow, unanimous.
Unanimous vote.
The town administrator's report and correspondence.
A couple of things I received, short of electrical aggregation for people who have lower electric bills, the second highest number of calls received in the office is, when is the bike rodeo going to be rescheduled? And I have no knowledge yet, but when we do, we will post it, try and get it on the sign out front, but it really generates quite a bit of business. Just, you probably all saw in the newspaper, but we did receive $150,000 grant through the Planning for Housing Production. I know Selectman Hall was at the award ceremony at the State House along with Marcy Birmingham on behalf of the towns of Abington, Rockland, and the Joint Waterworks. The $150,000 is to be used towards engineering, so that if we have the engineering, we become quote-unquote near shovel-ready, so that they can go ahead and we can apply for a grant that might mean as much as $1.5 million in the future, which would be used to develop more water at the Myers plant. That's the water that the town of Rockland is looking for, some of its 40R projects, like on Park Street. So This was a critical grant that we received, and I want to congratulate certainly Marcy and Dory and Rick LaFond, and certainly Dan Callahan, Tara, their engineer. I apologize for not knowing Tara's last name. Do you know? McManus, I believe McManus. But it was a great grant for the town going forward, and certainly a brilliant example of cooperation, as long as we're talking about cooperation between boards. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 35, Section 28B, we are supposed to designate somebody who is our representative to the Plymouth County Advisory Board, so that they can go ahead and represent us and or an alternative representative. I think they have a meeting on Thursday night in the past. I know, Mr. Mullen, you have attended many of these exciting meetings.
I have.
But I would ask the board to fill that position as soon as possible, unless anybody wants to volunteer tonight from the board.
I'm happy to continue if that's the will of the board.
Motion to appoint Mike.
Second.
All those in favor?
Done deal.
Thank you very much. I was asked to share a flyer, Rockland Day flyer. I know that Mr. Mullen will probably talk about it, and we have talked about it. June 16th is Rockland Day, and it is presented by the Youth Commission, Sullivan Funeral Home, the Reimagine Rockland Committee, many others, and pay close attention. We'll be doing a lot of advertisement about the events surrounding Rockland Day on June 16th at the Lower Memorial Field. And also just to say that I did represent the town at the BAT bus hearing. We know that it is important. We have, on average, 32 riders, and it is critical to them. So they are looking at whether or not they're going to continue a scheduled route, or by appointment, people could call up and be picked up and delivered to their places. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that streetlight conversion will start, it's 1 week delayed, May 21st. There are some sawhorses, if you saw them in the back parking lot. We'll be hosting a storage container for some of the lights, and dumpster during that process. It is about a 6-week process, and as soon as we have the schedule, I will share that through press releases in the media, etc. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen, and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. With that, Mr. O'Loughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing tonight. We talked about it, 2.5 hours ago. We presented the family of Staff Sergeant Sean O'Connell a plaque to have a street sign for a fallen hero dedicated to him this Saturday at 11 o'clock on the corner of Cliff Street and Glen Street in Rockland. It should be a pretty sizable turnout despite the weather. So if you're around, it's also Armed Forces Day, so it's a fitting tribute for a fallen soldier. That's it.
That it? Yep. Thank you. Mr. Mullen?
Just really quick, since last week's town meeting, I've heard like a few questions about the proposed demolition of the Lincoln School. That was talked about significantly, and people inquiring, what was next, and what's next is that the will of town voters have spoke, and we follow that will. And in the meantime, on like a separately related, but a related track, there is like a continued conversation about like a new fire station in town, and we had some additional attendance at our fire station building committee meeting last Thursday night. We're going to have like another meeting on Monday, May 21st at 7 o'clock. Like I believe in this building. I'm not sure if it'll be in this room or the room downstairs, but there was some proposed concepts introduced, and we're going to spend some time talking more about what those concepts are, how we how we got there, and should probably after the meeting on the 21st, Mr. Chairman, I will be able to come back to this board to share those concepts, some ideas, and I will really seek this board's feedback moving forward. That's going to be, excuse me, crucially important. So we should be able to do that, I'd say, within the next month or so. So I just want to let you all, like, and everyone at home know that the next meeting for the Fire Station Building Committee is on the 21st of May. And then shortly thereafter, in the next month or so, I will be back before this board to, we'll continue discussing this. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan?
I really don't have anything tonight.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Ms. Hall?
Just two things. Mr. Chaka mentioned the grant that the town of Abington and the town of Rockland got to expand water capacity at Myers. I just also wanted to give some kudos to the Reimagine Rockland Infrastructure and Parking Subcommittee. This was one of their deliverables that was identified during our planning process last year. That subcommittee is made up of different town employees as well as citizens, and they've worked to sort of help spearhead that as well. And so I want to make sure that that they also get some appreciation for that particular deliverable. Also tonight, I want to speak on something a little bit more personal. I don't know how many people know Karen Witten. Karen Witten is a member of our community. She's really actively involved in the Rockland Youth Soccer Program, and I'm sorry, I'm probably gonna cry. A few years ago, she went through cancer, and she came out pretty well on the other side, but she's since been afflicted again, and her prognosis is very grim. She has 2 young children. Her youngest son is the same age as my oldest son, and I know that she coached my son, Nathan, my oldest, for many years, and really made a significant impact on his life. Specifically last year when I was running for selectman and still working during the day, I was very busy, and my son really needed me in a way I couldn't be there for him, and Karen was really helpful to him. And I know we often remember people, once they've passed up here on the board, and I wanted to make sure that I remembered her and thanked her for everything that she's done for my family and for me when I couldn't be there for my son. She's a great woman, and I just hope if you know her that you guys can reach out and make sure that she's okay and her kids are okay, and stop by and see her. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to say that we have a new resident in Rockland that I'm proud to say. Our first grandchild was born last Tuesday. So Norma Marie is doing fine. She's home now. And she's a Rockland resident. Look at that, huh? So maybe another vote if I stay on for that long, but I don't know. I don't think so. I also want to wish Bob Anzella from the zoning board. He had some surgery recently, and he's recovering, so I wish him a speedy recovery. And I also wanted to touch a little bit based on where we're going as a town and whatnot. We had a very successful town meeting, but we still need to go, we still have a lot more work to do in town. There's still a lot more items that need to be done. We're looking at a fire station at some point. We're looking at possibly a new elementary school. As you heard from our highway guy, Dave Taylor, tonight, the roads project is still ongoing. This is starting to expand into sidewalks. The senior center, actually they're expanding the parking lot down there because of the use they have. So we may be looking at a second floor down there at some point in the future too. I know it's crazy, but I mean, we're all getting older. So, I mean, we've done a lot of good in town, and we still have a lot more to go. The Memorial Field project's going to be start up soon, which the Veterans Stadium, I mean, that's vital to get that refurbished and back to the shape it was. So we've been fortunate to have the support of the community, and I just want to recognize the fact that without the community, without our employees, without our department heads, I mean, none of that could be possible. And the direct benefit of that are all of us, the residents, because not only do we get the benefit of the services, but we also get the benefit of the values, the housing values of our homes, because those are big assets for most of us as you start to contemplate going into the next chapter of life. When you start to hit in your mid-50s and you start looking at grandchildren, what do you want to do with the house? It becomes part of retirement and things like that. So you know, it goes without notice that we have to recognize the fact that the good work of the people, you know, inside and outside of this room, really a big contributor to that. And I wanted to recognize them for that. People had touched base about Rockland Day. Apparently, the meeting I missed, we were all elected to go run a 5K. I don't know what that means to me, Larry. You know?
That should mean a lot.
I mean, how many? Oh, okay. And I hear Mr. O'Loughlin's training because he wants to take the crown, right?
As much as I'd hate to miss it, it's my 50th class reunion, and
So you won't be videoing?
I won't be what time does it start the race? I don't know. I got an appointment. We're going up to see the new Quincy High School. Of course, we were all in the old one back in the old days, so now we have to go see the new one. And in 50 years, huh? What did they do with the old one? They knocked it down. There you go. Along with the old YMCA and everything. Whole place up there is all changed. You had gone and come back after 30 years, you'd say, I didn't go to school there. It's all different.
Well, I think change is good, and it just goes to demonstrate that it's nice to have history, it's nice to have that, but it's also good to have change when we can bring progress. And I think tonight we all made some progress, and I'm appreciative of that, and I'm looking forward to everybody working together, you know, for the next year's agenda. And, you know, with that, I know our attorney's here, and we have to get into executive session, so for contract negotiations, so if we can have a motion.
Motion to adjourn into executive session for contract negotiations not to reconvene.
Second. All those in favor, it needs to be a voice vote.
Aye.
Roll call vote, excuse me, I made that mistake before.
Call the roll. Mr. O'Loughlin.
A roll call vote. Mr. Laughlin.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Mullen.
Yes.
And myself, yes. And thank you for reminding me of that. And thank you, Mary Parsons, for reminding me of that as well. Because I appreciate that. I do. Because sometimes you get caught up in the moment. So,